Hello everybody, in today's video I'm gonna be talking about some bullshit clouds, some freaking bullshit clouds all over. As you can see, I hope you can see them, but there are some clouds around me, and no, this is not a studio. These are real clouds, by the way. I really hope you can see them, but I'm not sure if you can, because my camera has been, I gotta get myself some special camera or something for this. But it is what it is, There's nothing I can really do about it, per se. I got a low quality camera. Not the highest of quality. It's quality enough, It's not quality at best, but it's quality enough. And, it makes me think, hey, maybe the gods were right. And yes, I'm using plural. Not singular, plural. Because how can you say that there's a bunch of... No, not a bunch of... How there's one uppercase G God? I don't know, man. Something seems suspicious there. But hey, that's not what I'm here to beef about. Monotheism and polytheism. Actually, you know what? Maybe I am. Because the gods, all of them, unlimited amount. Just like how there's an unlimited amount of souls versus an unlimited amount of gods. The gods are the ones you worship. Okay? They are the ones where the divine is through the physical, That's what they say. So it's okay to worship idols. Alright, that's fine. Just don't do any child sacrifice or something. Don't do any cannibalism. Don't do anything actually, immoral. Then yeah, you can worship all the idols you want, But if you want to be good at a specific thing, you have to please that specific God. And the name of that God and what you're specifically into, if your religion has that, depends on whatever culture or society or language you speak or use, Maybe dialect as well, or even accent. But if you want to be good at specific things, then again, you have to appeal to those specific gods. And people try to say, oh, you're just describing paganism, but there are a lot of monotheistic pagans out there. Paganism basically just means a nature-based religion in some way, or a nature-based spirituality, which means that it's basically where nature is like a big deal in their beliefs. Not like other religions where it's like, oh, it so happens to be a part of it, like Christianity. No, because they're not pagan, That's not what that means. Pagan would be like Wicca. It would be like heathenry, stuff like that. Generally speaking, at least in Western culture, But you might go, well, then wouldn't Hindus be pagan? No, not really, no. They're, it's sort of a category name. But the whole idea of them being polytheistic, mostly just because a lot of the more well-known pagan religions, or at least the ones in, that were preserved in Christianity, tended to be polytheistic, because that's where the more dominant religions were, especially with the Greeks, Romans, or say, what do you call it? I believe it was called Canaan, but I'm not sure. You know, there was Baal and Molech, stuff like that. But those kind of beliefs are not really around, and yeah, paganism has its problems, but so does every other category of religion, like monotheism. Christianity has its problems, you know, because they have a lot of people who believe in that religion, and even ones of the same denomination, they sometimes don't get along simply just because, well, we had issues in the past, so we gotta make it everybody else's problem, you know. Like, it gets stranger and stranger and stranger the more you talk about it, you know. But still, how does this relate to a bullshit cloud? I don't know. No, I do not know. Socrates said that basically he thought writing was garbage. I don't remember what he said exactly, but like, he thought that people would just lose their minds because writing wouldn't help. But actually, it did help. It did increase memory and stuff like that. But you see, back then, writing as a whole, writing for languages as a whole, was just not a very common thing. And writing was actually very, very new and very, very big, you know? Like the way that today we would use writing, you know, with alphabets and stuff like that. That form of writing was literally very, very, very new at that time. So, a lot of the people who used writing, such as Plato, one of his students, yes, that philosopher Plato, that was one of his students, that wrote it down. We probably wouldn't know about Socrates if we never had writing. So it kind of beats itself, you know. And it turns out, yeah, writing is actually good for you. But at the time, they didn't have that information because, well, it didn't exist yet. You know, it didn't exist in his lifetime. It would be thousands upon thousands of years after his death that eventually we came to the conclusion, yeah, it is good for you. But people didn't fully realize that until about, I want to say 50 years ago. Which, for me, time of recording 50 years ago would have been 1976. So, yeah. There's that as well. That was my 50 years ago, time of recording. And that's just how it currently is. You know? Touching the grass. Excuse me. But yeah, the world has a very, 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 very long history. Ow. You know? They try to say, oh, your country only has like a few hundred years of history. Therefore, it must be the only history you really have. Like, especially Europeans, because they'll see United States as like this country that's about to have like 250 years. And they're like, oh, you're such a young country. But it's like, you're only thinking about the 250 years that we've been a country, you know? They're not thinking about the periods, the 300 to 400 years before, you know, that of what led up to that. And they also don't think about all the thousands of years of history that what they now call the Native Americans or Indigenous Americans, the tribes they fought against, all the wars they did, you know. There's a big misconception that they were all friendly and brown, like brown skinned before, you know, white people came, and they try to say, oh, it was mostly the Europeans. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it was mostly disease and mostly to things like, you know, tribes not getting along, because there were always tribes that never got along. Like, they try to make them like this peace thing, and obviously I don't even have to mention those tribes, because it's like they beef with each other over the littlest shit. I don't like, if you are a part of these tribes, you know who you are. Okay, like, I don't even have to tell you. You just, like, if you know about it, you know. Okay, if you know, you know. Like, that's basically that kind of thing. And without naming any specific tribes, because obviously I don't really want to start a war in the comment section, although I probably already did that anyway, so fuck. But you have these people that are just like, they hate each other. They just hate each other. They love to hate, especially if you go to like Oklahoma or Arizona, Nevada, states like that, or yeah, Oklahoma mostly, you know. Not Idaho, but I guess Idaho, but it's mostly just New Mexico is what I meant to say. New Mexico, and Oklahoma, you know, because that's where the majority of them are. And people try to say, oh, but they got wiped out, you know. Yeah, but Europeans were wiping out each other, Native Americans were wiping out each other, and they wiped out themselves, you know. And on top of that, did you know that most Caucasian people, which is white people that are non-native to Europe, most Caucasian people in the U.S. have a slight Native American DNA in their body, and this is because they breeded so much together that they kind of formed their own race and they became the Caucasians. Now, yes, it does technically apply to some Europeans in Europe, but that's more of a racial ethnic term than it is a genetic thing, because whiteness, anybody can really declare themselves as white, but not everybody can be Caucasian, you know, because Caucasian, yes, is an ethnic group of white people, that is true, but they're mostly in North America, specifically the United States, because that's where a lot of them so happen to be, and a lot of them that didn't mix with those specific tribes and those specific groups, they became Latinos. They became Latinos, basically. You know? That's just how it is. That is just how it is. You know? Because Latino, I guess technically speaking, or depending on your genetics, realistically speaking, is its own racial group to an extent. I mean, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of brown or black looking Latinos, that's true, but it's like, that mostly has to do with slavery in mostly Brazil. So, not the end of the world, you know. It is what it is. They say every Miku is canon, and then they draw a black fat Miku. And then the next one is every Miku is canon, and then it's like a white, skinny, well, not completely skinny, but like regularly thin for a woman anyway, a real woman anyway, sized, white, like super duper white, like Nazi looking, like every Miku is canon, you know, on the whole X or whatever. Really gets them in my head. Like, I feel like that one scene in the Boondocks where it's like, I never said that word before until he came around or something like that. You know? Like, I don't even notice it anymore. The N-word, the nigger, the nigga, whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't really notice those words as much. All over a bullshit cloud. Said all this over a fucking bullshit cloud. Whatever, man. So I just be talking. Just be talking while walking. You know? And nobody be thinking anything of it. Other than, yeah, you just be walking and talking. You know? Do you think the real people who control the world are actually just, you know, hiding the fact that, hey, let's blame the Jews, let's blame the whoever the hell, and they just want you to blame that so that way they can stay in power without you pointing out who they really are, you know? So that way you never notice when they take over, you know? You could say the lizard people, but I have the feeling that the lizard people are fracturing over power. Again, because they're still hungry for power, and they dominated for so much that, especially recently, as I'm saying this, they're going into a bunch of subgroups, and those subgroups are turning into subgroups, and those secret societies can't trust each other, you know? And it's a big war over who controls the world, you know? And yes, there is that nations, but that's just the part you get to see. That's just the part you're aware about. What they're really fighting over is who gets to be the first civilization to control the universe. And once they start expanding in the next 10,000 years to other planets, they're going to try to take any groups that they have at that time, which there will be a lot of since the Illuminati is fracturing more than ever. And the Illuminati won't exist because there will be too many groups fracturing off. And directly in the next 1,000 years, you're going to see all these groups go to the farthest parts of the universe and start dominating. And then eventually, as that happens, and as their secret societies are forming, there will be entire planets that they will own that will be completely fractured and will have countries that are smaller than the size of Vatican City. You know? All over that planet. And the geographies are going to be different, the languages are going to be different, and then they're going to spread all those cultures across the universe. And then in about 10,000 years from now, when they can finally say that they're lizard people, I mean, they could a few decades from now, they could right now, you know? But I mean, like, when they try to be like they'll already reveal it at one point. I know they're going to reveal it either within this century or the next century. But once they do reveal that they're lizard people, these lizard people are going to start doing that. You know, they're going to start doing their domination and start, like, they don't really care about humans as much anymore as they used to, you know? Now that nobody really cares about aliens anymore. Like, they tried and tried and tried. Now they're just coming to the realization that, hey, maybe, just maybe, they don't care anymore because of whatever's going on with war or whatnot. You know? So they're probably just going to... Because they never had a home world. They never had a home world. You know? They might be from Earth, but they're not human. You know? These lizard people. Yes, they are from Earth, but they are not human. They are not human. Alright? But they're trying to make a home world, you know? And so, once they do find one, or they find many, we all know that those lizard people never get along. They're always fracturing all the time. And again, especially recently. Since there's too much power now. And a lot of the oldest are dying off. You know? So a lot of the youngest that is old enough to fight this are doing this. And they can die, but they don't die how like we die. You know? When they die, they turn into ash instantly. They shrivel up, turn into a ball, and then they slowly start to turn into ash over time. You know? And they just become a pile of ash, because they don't need cremation. That's why they don't like cremation, you know? And it did influence some religions over the thousands of years, such as Judaism or some parts of Christianity. But it is what it is. But anyway, I gotta go. I have problems. The government, the lizard people, not the lizard people, but the governments that they hide under come to look for me for information, so-called. But yeah, I gotta go, because they're on to me.